Helps if you add people into the stream, doesn't it? Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Afternoon Rabble here on the Rangers Rabble Podcast, part of the Rabble Network and the Talk Sport Fan Network as well. Excuse me. I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope everybody's doing well. No doubt we'll have some of the same members who were giving me abuse at 10 o'clock this morning. But it's all good. So I get used to it, Willie. I get used to it. And I'm delighted to say I am joined by a good, close, personal, good friend of mine, William Irwin. Wally, how are you?
I wasn't supposed to be working this morning, but I get called in, so I had to rush into work and then come all the way back home to do the podcast. Because I promised you I would do it. I'm just that kind of guy.
It's all about that money, Wally, isn't it? It's all about that money.
Well, it is as well. Of course, that. I mean, that does help, the fact they're paying you for it. Do you know what I mean? If I was doing it for free, then it would seem really sad.
Just like everybody.
I like people don't know, but you actually pay me. You pay me to come on the Rabble as well. Just in case anybody else to know, Martin actually pays me loads of money to come on because he knows how good I am. That's basically how it is.
£100,000 an hour. That's how much Wally gets paid.
If only. If only.
Anyways, get your comments in, folks. Let us know what's happening. Please do give the show a like as well. But I know we're quite early in, and we've only got just over 100 people tuned in so far. But if all of those 127 people like right now, then we'll have 127 likes, which is incredible. So go for that. Let's get to 127. Let's do it. And Willie, let's get right into the Rangers news, shall we? And let's start with something probably a wee bit closer to home for you than most. Leon King looks as if he is making his way down south to Wycombe Wanderers to join Alex Lowry. It's no real surprise, Willie, is it?
No, look, I think it's been a really tough last few years for Leon. And the thing is, like Oz, because I've kind of watched him for a long time as well, you see how difficult a period it's been for him. He obviously kind of got his breakthrough at Rangers with Giovanni. Ended up playing in those Champions League games, which, look, I mean, at the time, he had to play in them. We didn't really have anybody else that could play. I was down at Anfield that night when we lost 2-0, but it could have been anything that night, the amount of chances they had. Obviously, he played in some of the other games as well, and it was really tough on him.
But see, at the end of the day, I'm hearing now it's off, apparently.
Right. I think the one thing I would say for Leon is, right, sort of regardless of what happens now, or if it happens in January at the end of the season, the one thing Leon needs is to go and play. You know, he needs to play regular football. Because basically in the last kind of 2 to 3 years, he's only had a limited amount of game time. And no matter how good a player you are, or if you're having a bad time, or whatever else is going on, if you're not playing football, you're never going to develop into the player that you could become. You know, like Leon was comfortably one of the best players in the country at 15, 16, comfortably one of the best players in the country. And for whatever reason, it's not kicked on for him. And possibly a fresh start somewhere is exactly what he needs. Now, this possibly should have happened 2 years ago, and he should have been out. But I think, yet again, selfishly, you've had some managers that have held some players back just to use them in the European squad. Now, that's happened to not just Leon King, it's happened to several other Scottish players that are probably now approaching 21, even maybe 22, some of them, where they probably should have been out on loan and played 60, 70, 80 games of men's football by now. Instead, they were kept back by Rangers to play in like the European squad because we basically couldn't fill a 25-man squad most of the time that could travel. And that was a big issue. And that's why some players were held back. And in reality, looking back now, it's probably stagnated a few players to a point where they're almost just like sitting on the sidelines, just watching on. And for some of these guys, that's just not good enough given the level of talent and ability they have.
Do you think that's an issue across football, Willie, in terms of, obviously there's registration rules now for the Champions League, for the Europa League, for all the European competitions, etc. I think there's even, I don't know about Scotland, but I certainly know there's registration rules in England. For the Premier League, you have to have so many homegrown players, which most would probably argue, Willie, is a good thing, because then it kind of forces you to try and promote from within. But if players like Leon King if players like, and it's early days for them yet, but for the likes of Josh Gentles, Ross McCausland,
yeah.
if these players are just being used to fill a quota, is that right?
No. I mean, quite simply, no. I mean, like, players should be there because they deserve to be there. And I think that's one of the issues that we have in Scottish football. And, this isn't a disrespectful thing to any of the players that Rangers are signed, but the reality is, I don't think we would have signed Scott Wright if it wasn't for the European quota. And that's not to say that Scott Wright's not a good footballer. It's just to say that we did sign Scottish players because they could fill the homegrown quota and they could fill the Scottish quota. And, that's one of the reasons that Liam Kelly come back. Obviously, Liam is a good goalkeeper, but it helps that he come through the Rangers Academy. So when we allowed, obviously, Robbie McCrory to leave, then Liam Kelly was the obvious one to bring in because it was like a direct replacement, like for like. But yeah, look, there's absolutely no doubt we have stopped young players from pushing on in their career because we've held them back, and we've turned down loan moves for them. I mean, in my honest opinion, see at the stage that Leon's at right now, given where he was at 15, 16, Leon should probably have played 100 games by now, 125 games of football. Whether that was going out on loan for a season or two and learning his trade and developing maybe at a championship club and then maybe going down to England, maybe to a League One or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there should have been something in place for him where he just kept moving up the ladder until he could come back to Rangers and hit that level. Instead, what's happened is he's been held back. And people will say, well, he's not good enough. But the reality is, if people look at it from the other standpoint, I think there was several times that loans were knocked back for Leon King because they didn't want to let him go because it helped the homegrown quota as part of a European competition. Because if he'd went out on loan, it's not like they could fill that void with anybody else. There wasn't anybody else to fill the void. Like, there was nobody else to select. And this is one of the ongoing issues that definitely needs to be looked at. People will say as well, he's not good enough, as I said earlier. But the thing is, we'll never know that, though, because we've stagnated and we've allowed players to sit about for so long and we've not really allowed them to push on in their career. I mean, you can't tell me, and this isn't a disrespectful thing, right? See, because Conor Barry had a really good loan spell, like from Aberdeen, and then come back and played for Aberdeen, then that helped him develop into the player now that he is at Rangers. But far too often we've held guys back, not sent them out alone. I mean, that loan in the second half of last season with Leon was only put there because the B team was basically disbanded in the second half of last season and there was nowhere for him to go.
Well, so Lyle Cameron, was it 2 seasons ago or whatever, was on loan at Peterhead and barely played.
And that's what I'm saying, mate. Like, there's huge problems when you look at the overall quota, that there's players being signed for football clubs who probably wouldn't be at these football clubs if it wasn't for the homegrown quota. And you look at English clubs now who are signing, like third choice goalkeepers just because they're English, and they're putting them in the squad because they can use them as part of a European squad or because it helps like their Premier League quota. It's totally wrong. Like, there's guys at football clubs that shouldn't be at football clubs and they're only there because of their nationality. And that, like, to me, is a huge, huge problem within football in general. When you look at Scotland, more and more clubs need to do more to get young players into first teams. Like, we could go over like the game at the weekend, but there's no point because we've kind of spoke about it so much. But why shouldn't we give like Josh Gentles a chance? Why shouldn't we give Finlay Chortis like 15, 20 games this season for the start? Because this is the problem. Like, we could just like sort of hold these guys back for another year, but then they don't play a game of football. Now, that's not helping Finlay and it's not helping Josh. So what do you do with those two players? It's like the toss of a coin. You'll have guys on like the pod today who maybe like are in the comments. Like, see the guys in the comments, what should we do with Josh Gentles and Finlay Curtis? What's your honest opinion on those two? Should they be kept around the first team? Should they go out and loan? So what is the best thing for those two young players? Because I'm sure it will cause a divide amongst people. Because, like, realistically, you could add those two to the European squad and just let them be part of that European squad up until January, February time.
Yeah, but they don't play a single or much minutes of football.
Yeah, of course, mate. And like, to me, that is not good enough. And that's what's happened to Leon King, and it's happened to several other young players who have basically just sat there and sat there and sat there while they probably could have been out on loan playing 30, 40 games a season. So it's we're to blame, but see, as a club, we're to blame for this. This isn't down to the players as well, by the way. Like Rangers as a football club should take responsibility for some of the things that's happened.
Well, Paul's asking, Wally, is it correct that Leon refused to go out on loan last season because he thought he could get into the team?
I mean, yeah, again, there was chat that was the case, but yeah, again, I heard the other way that the club had knocked back some loans up until the one that happened in Queen's Park.
Yeah.
I mean, see, unless like Leon comes out and says that, or the club come out and say that, we're not going to know what the truth is, are we?
Well, no, you very rarely do find out the truth until, like, I don't know, somebody makes it at another team, and then when they're retired, bring out a book. That's usually when you find out.
But see, at the end of the day, like, Leon King's going to get his salary for Rangers regardless if he stays at Rangers or goes out on loan. So even if he'd went out on loan, say, last season, and that team were paying him £1,000 a week, Rangers have still got to top up the remaining part of his wages anyway. So like, it wouldn't matter if he was at Rangers or out on loan, if you know what I mean.
He's got, what is it, 1 year left on his contract?
Yeah, that's it. I believe this is the last year of Leon's contract. Yeah.
Right, so see if he doesn't go out and play any football, right, and just stays on the bench at Rangers and stays in the selection for Europe and stuff.
Yeah.
What team's going to take him at the end of his contract? If he's not played any football, he'll be 23 by then, I think, Wally, 22.
He'll be 21, 22, I think. Yes, you'd imagine 21, 22.
So a 22-year-old who's played a handful of games in the Champions League, but not much else. It's not great for his development. No,
it's not, and that's a worry for so many players that left the club this summer. I think we touched on that at the end of last season, that the amount of players that actually left Rangers in the summer with little or no first team experience, because they basically left the academy, and that was it. Some of them get partial loans in the second half of last season, but before that, a decent amount of those guys hadn't even been out on loan. So the only way that teams would have seen them play would have been maybe in the Challenge Cup or at B-team games, or maybe the odd 18s game if somebody was there watching them. That'd be better. And that, to me, yet again, is not helping young players. There's so much wrong, mate. Like, it's crazy, really.
Well, Kenneth, usual hype over young players, King Lowry, Stephen, etc., they're not good enough. But it goes back to the point that you made, Wally. If they're not getting enough time in and around the first team and getting enough minutes, how are we ever going to know if these players are good enough? It's the same adage of that pre-season game against Bruges. At half-time, people were booing. Right? Now, like you said, look, everybody's entitled to do what they want. You pay your ticket, you do what you want as long as it's within the law. Right? So I get that. But do people seriously think that a bit of a loan stint at Hearts and 2 or 3 games in the first team is going to tell us whether Lowry's good enough or not?
No, it's not, because it has to be like sort of judged over a longer period of time. And I think the thing is, like, people come out with opinions like that they're not good enough, but people are basing that on a handful of games. Do you know what I mean? Like, people are like, you'll see people on social media saying, like, he's hopeless, he's shit, he's all that. But these guys have no idea what it's took for these guys just to get a professional contract at Rangers at 16 years old. Like, they've got no idea how difficult it is, like, just to be that select few players that actually are given a professional contract at a club in Scotland. Like, they've got no idea how difficult it is just to make, like, the Rangers first team fringe. Like, they've got no idea what it takes to be a squad player. Like, to have actually played a first team game for Rangers, to have scored a goal for it. Like, so most people have absolutely no idea what that takes. So see, when you see, like, some idiotic comments that you see on social media where you've got some guy who's probably never been able to kick a ball in a straight line to somebody else on a football pitch on Twitter saying, this guy's shit or this guy's hopeless. Aye, but do you know what I mean, though? Like, this is like the mental part of social media, that you'll have people, like, sort of blotting out opinions, which is just, in all honesty, complete and utter nonsense. I mean, you know what it's like, mate. Like, you see what's happened to your wee brother, mate. Like, how difficult was that for your wee brother just to be one of those guys that was good enough to get a professional contract?
Yeah, extremely difficult.
I mean? And yet you'll have guys online that will say, oh, he's shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, mate, like you wouldn't have even been good enough to have even been like so at like a club at 13 or 14 or 15, and yet you're on social media telling somebody that they're shit. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's actually wild, some of the takes that some people have on young players.
My little brother was at Rangers he would have been about 10 or 11, I think. And Kevin Thompson wanted to keep him. And I think it was Mulholland that didn't.
Right.
And that judgment's been made on kids at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. That judgment's been made on young kids, right? So see the select few who managed to get through that.
Yeah.
It's a difficult road. And see for the players, by the way, I know we're going off on a tangent here, right? See for the players who don't make it at a Rangers or a Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my little brother left Rangers and then he went to, I'll forget it now, right? But he done some more pro youth with Hearts and Motherwell and stuff like that. He went to play for Eddlewood and Hamilton, amateur team. And then eventually got picked up and went to Dundee United. So it's so difficult out. There's so much pressure, so much. The point I'm trying to get to, for people like Leon King, for people like Alex Lowry, for people like Ross McCausland, the pressure on kids at 18, 19, 20, when you're close to a first team, especially a first team like Rangers, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably the hardest team besides Celtic and Scotland for a young player to break into. The pressure on these kids is immense.
Yeah. See, I don't think people see that side. Like, so people don't see the human side of it, don't they? Know? Like, people don't see like the effects it has in young players. I mean, like, this is why I don't get why like anybody would go online and like sort of send a personal tweet to a player and say that he's absolutely crap. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the mad thing about it. And that's where like I don't get people like that who have no understanding as to how difficult. I mean, see, even talking to some of the parents, and you talk about like the boys that have been in training during the day at the academy, but then they'll go straight to the gym afterwards and they'll work on the things. And even in the off season, like you listen to Finlay Curtis here, you know, even on his like 4, 5, 6 weeks off, he's away like doing extra stuff. He's away doing extra running and probably extra weights and all these extra things, just so that he's got that 1% more than somebody else who comes back for pre-season. And yet this time next season, maybe because Finlay's not played in the first team, somebody will say, well, he's shit, isn't he? He was never good enough for Rangers. Which is just wild, isn't it? It's absolutely mad that people like sort of have these opinions. Like they don't know how hard it is for these guys just to actually get in and around the Rangers first team. It's so difficult, and it shows you the money that's going around in England's just crazy. You know, when you look at guys at 15-year-old, and yeah, it is, mate, and that's the thing that people don't see as well. It's I can have a rant for hours about it, reality, but we're probably better talking about other things, aren't we?
Yeah, look, let's move on, shall we? Because I believe, Willie, that we're going to be bringing, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, we'll be bringing the Academy reviews back.
Well, yes, hopefully. Obviously, you're waiting for some news and stuff like that, so don't want to say anything in case it doesn't happen. But yeah, we're hopeful of putting some things in place, and we maybe even get the odd interview here or not. We'll see how things work out. We'll obviously maybe try and do like breakdowns of individual players during the season. And if it is possible, this is obviously we're not saying this could happen, but if it is possible, we maybe will try and get like a Finlay Curtis on the pod or a Josh Gentles or whatever. You know, like we can ask the question at the club. They might tell us no, but if people would like to hear a background for some of these players in terms of, you know, how they arrived at Rangers, how they broke through the academy, how they got to the first team, how difficult it was, the hours and hours of training and the months and months in the winter time where it's freezing cold that they're still out doing what they need to do. And if people are interested in that stuff, then obviously hit Martin up in the comments. And if that's the case and people want to see that, we'll definitely try and see if we can get something sorted with Rangers. But obviously, you just never know.
You just never know, but absolutely, we'll do everything we can behind the scenes to try and make that happen. Although I think by the time it's all set up, I think Finlay Curtis might be a bit too big big a name for us, Willie. He'll be in and around that first team. He'll be a first team player. We'll not be allowed to.
I know. Well, I did. I messaged his brother yesterday, asked if I can get his autograph now. So, I mean, that's it. Like, I really, before like going too much attack. I mean, they're such a nice family. Like his brother, I think, is coming to, the 19s game on Saturday this week. Just because he loves Rangers, like he just loves watching Rangers play. Because his brother's likely going to be down at St George's Park, which obviously people are not going to get access to. So, for him, it just the opportunity to come and watch Rangers play. So he'll probably be at the training ground this Saturday watching the game along with me and you if you could make it, obviously.
I know, yes, I'll be there. Don't you worry, I'll be there. Right, okay, let's get to some transfer news then, Willie, shall we?
Okay,
right. So it's rumoured to be announced today at some point.
Right.
Don't know what time. It could be now. Could be in an hour. Could be I don't know. Soon. That the Djiga deal has been done.
Right.
The loan from Wolves, straight loan, back at the end of the season. Big, powerful centre back. A position we're just desperate to fill, Willie.
Yeah, look, I think it's clear that we do need to add some real quality at centre half. I think the writing's on the wall for guys like Robin Proper. When, it wasn't a great return for pre-season for Robin. And if the rumours are starting to go about Leon, then it looks like there's a decent chance that Leon could either go out on loan or leave permanently in this window, which basically just leaves you with John Souttar. I mean, you look at us, we've literally just signed Fernandes from Peterborough. So there's not a lot of defensive cover there. So it certainly makes sense to get somebody in who is going to be a first choice pick. And this is the guy that's played Champions League football. I think I checked online. Is it 14 Champions League games this guy's played at the age of 22? I mean, that's pretty good going for somebody that age. Obviously, when you sign for Red Star Belgrade, you get a chance of playing in the Champions League every season. But it's interesting when you read his backstory, obviously coming over to France, playing in like the second tier of French football, getting a bit of exposure to football, a bit like what we're talking about with Leon King and Alex Lowry earlier, going out and loan, learning your trade, all that stuff. And then he's got his move. And it was probably, some people maybe viewed it as a sideways move to Red Star Belgrade, because maybe going to like Serbia and Croatia and countries like that maybe isn't deemed to be the in thing. But that's allowed him to play in the Champions League. And then it's allowed him to then get that big move to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Yes, maybe that second half of last season wasn't how he hoped it was going to be. But for us to be able to get somebody like that in on a 1 year loan who can help us and we can help him. And yeah, I mean, looking at this, I mean, see if him and Fernandes play side to side. I mean, that might be the biggest two Rangers centre halves that I've ever seen. Like kind of side by side.
Well, can I just take you back to your comment there about he's played? I think it's 14. Champions League games, right? And he's not, and Wolves don't see him as good enough yet to play in the Premier League.
I know.
Is that the vast difference? Is that what we are constantly fighting against? Not just with our neighbours next door.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if it's the best league. It's the most funded league, right? That's what I'll call it, the most funded league, right? So we've got that to compete with in terms of trying to bring players in. But also, you've got a guy who's played 14 games in the Champions League who isn't good enough for the EPL. How difficult does that make it for us in Europe to compete? If we can sign a guy who's played in the Champions League but isn't good enough to play in certain leagues?
Yeah, we almost have to get these guys before they actually move. So, for instance, when this guy left France, where I think he went out and loaned to Red Star before they signed him permanently, we need to get in there before Red Star Belgrade sign him.
Mm-hmm.
Or we need to take a punt on somebody who maybe hasn't developed yet, a bit like a Fernandes. Because if you look at Fernandes, I've tried to kind of look at some videos of him. Obviously, it's a bit sporadic because it's obviously a lot of short videos and stuff. But you can see the rawness. But he's got a good turn of pace. He's very strong. And again, it's a big if, because you can say that about any young player that you sign. If you can get him to push on to the level that he could push on to, Rangers could be looking at a 15, 20 million pound player. Because any good young English player will always end up back in England realistically, and they're prepared to spend that kind of money. Do you know what I mean? And that's the problem.
We were talking yesterday, Wally. We were talking yesterday about the fact that Rangers might pay £10 million for one player, right?
I know.
And the comments were full of no chance. Absolutely, we're not paying that kind of money. My head's going, no chance we're paying that kind of money. Wolves will pay £30 million for a player that they don't know is going to work or not. Well, that's Wolves. Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah, well, I think there was chat earlier on this week that Crystal Palace were about to break their record by spending, what was it, €55 million on a player. I mean, if Rangers and Celtic couldn't be any further away in a lot of things, like when it comes to the football transfer market now.
Yeah, finance.
It's actually scary. I never thought I would see the day that Rangers and Celtic were this far away in terms of being able to like attract players of a certain quality. And I think that's the problem. But what Rangers have been really poor at doing is bringing in guys who should have been better, but they aren't. So, like, you know, when you look at like your Lammers, like the deal for Lammers, like he should have been a good signing, Lammers. When you looked at his background, the leagues he'd played in and stuff like that, he should have been a good fit. But in reality, it didn't work. If you look at Matondo, yeah, again, Rangers probably took a risk on him. He had his big move for Man City and it didn't work out. So Rangers took a punt, bringing him back to Britain. And clearly that's not worked out. So Rangers need to get more of these right than they do wrong. Whereas Celtic have got more right than they've got wrong. And that's why they've been successful and we haven't. But you see, when you look at the money that Rangers have spent even over the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's not like we've only been buying guys for £500,000 and £1 million. You know, look at the amount of players we've paid. Yeah, but like we've paid good money for players like £3, £4, £5 million for several players over those years. You know, and it's just been really, really poor transfers and really poor business. And as the guy, you know, put in the comment there about Fabio Silva, when you look at the money that Wolves paid for Fabio Silva, what was he, like 17, 18 at the time?
They paid like 35, 40 million for him or something.
Yeah. So he should have hit the ground running in Scotland and absolutely destroyed Scottish football. And at moments he did really good things. There's no doubt he did. But we didn't see that level of consistency. And that's where like the transfers need to be so good this summer. Because see, for all like sort of people's opinion, whether it was due to be Ancelotti or it was going to be Russell Martin, do you know the biggest thing that really mattered this summer was bringing in good quality football players. Nothing else mattered. We could have brought in a guy who was a manager in League Two last season, but see if we didn't recruit the right players, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? No, so like, regardless of who the manager is at any football club, it'll always come down to recruitment. Because recruitment's key to every summer. And we've got it wrong so often, and it's totally unacceptable how much money we've wasted in the transfer market. That's why, in some ways, it is exciting to see that like your Diamandis are being linked with £10+ million moves, that like your Igamans are being linked with £15 million moves, Raskan £15 million moves. We've not really had that for a number of years now, because basically we spent more time paying guys off and telling them to piss off, basically, than we have actually taken money in through the door. You know, last summer was a disgrace. I mean, if that's true that we took in less than £1 million from the sale of guys like Lammers and Goldson, etc., that is an utter disgrace.
Can't well as well.
And like, yeah, and you can't get away from that. These are guys that if they'd been, you know, like sort of properly looked after, properly developed, and they showed the levels that they should have got to, we should have at least been turning a profit on all of those guys. Instead, we find ourselves in a position where we're basically having to let them go for free just to clear their wages. Yeah. That's why this summer the recruitment's got to be paramount, and we're not really going to know how good it is until we start the season, because these friendly games will only tell us a very, very, very small amount of how good they can be.
Well, we've got guys, and I include myself in that, right? But a lot of people in the comments saying, get rid of the Deadwood, right? Dessers, Danilo, Bayrami, right? Just to name but 3. That's 15 million quids worth of players that we've paid. And people are calling it, and maybe rightly so. I'm not saying whether they're good, whether they're bad, indifferent. I'm just saying Danilo 6 million, Dessers 4 million. Bayrami was rumoured that he'd have between 3.5 and 4.5 million.
Yeah.
Right. So Rangers have spent a significant amount of money, right? I don't know whether it's right or it's wrong, right? But it's banter between the two clubs, right? We look at what they paid for the Belgian boy, Engels.
Yeah, Engels.
Right? And between 11 and 13 million. And we're all sitting back going, laughing and joking. I can't believe they paid that for him. We paid 6 million for Danilo, who's never been fit. We paid 4 million for Dessers, who albeit has scored goals and I think gets a little bit of a bad rap. And Bayrami was 4.5 million. Like, we're in no position as a football club to laugh at anybody's transfer business.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, even looking at Ben Davies cost us £3 million.
Yeah, I forgot.
So we need to get as much of that money back as possible for Ben Davies when he leaves this football club. You know, that's the reality. We also paid, what was it, like between 2 and 3 million for Rabbi Matondo. We're likely not going to see any of that back. Obviously, Kieran Dall's been here for a couple of years and he's been picking up a good salary. That's just like dead money, isn't it? It's usually like Danilo at 6.
We forget about the wages. We don't add the wages into that. Like, Danilo comes in for 6 million, Willie. He's on at least 25-30 grand a week.
Yeah, look, the scary thing is, mate, see when you look at the players that have just returned from their loan sales, like your sort of Jose coming back from playing for like Aris last season. Most people probably forget that he's a Rangers player. He's about to rock up back at the training ground or St George's Park, and the manager's like, who the fuck is this guy? Because I didn't even see him on any of the videos last year that the Rangers played. Then you've got Ben Davies, you've got Kieran Dall, you know, and then even just the guys on like the fringes of the team, guys that maybe didn't even play that much last year. We must be sitting with about 30 players, 32 players in that first team squad right now. So that needs to come down massively. I mean, you're probably talking
a wage bill. I think back at the last EGM, but an EGM they had the wage bill up on the screen, didn't they? And what was the wage bill? It was like 35 million, I think.
I think that's actually coming down from where it was before. I think
it was up at 58 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think from what I was like sort of reading online, and yet again, you're never too sure how true it is, but it's rumoured that last season they cut about £10 million off the wage bill, which is wild given the amount of players we still had on the wage bill who still weren't actually part of the first team squad. That's how much wasted money it is, and that's why, like, you understand the anger in the comments, and you understand the anger among supporters with the money that's been wasted on players, because the bare minimum you're always looking for is for players to come in and help the club be successful. If they help the club be successful, then that brings in money. So by making the Champions League, if you need to spend 10, 15, 20 million pounds on 2 or 3 good players, that's worth it purely for the Champions League money. So like, the Europa League does us okay to a point, but the reality is the Champions League's where you need to be if you want the big money. Because every year that Celtic get to the Champions League and we don't, it's just making the gap for the funding bigger and bigger and bigger. I think
also you need to get to the Champions League to make a profit. I don't think as much as the Europa League's great, and if you manage to get all the way to the final, it brings you in quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Don't for what you make, just getting to the playoff round of the new format of the Champions League trumps anything you can do in the Europa. You need to be in the Champions League to start making.
Yeah, the other side of that is you probably need to sell somebody every summer as well. And I mean, there's like Celtic selling Kuhn. In reality, like what Kuhn's going for is not a huge profit in the bigger scheme of things, because the money that they paid for him, I'm sure, I think it was Rapid Vienna they signed him from, so like, they'll probably do a sell on. So say Celtic make between £8 and £10 million, that's not really a huge profit in the bigger scheme of things, because see if he was the guy to shoot them to the Champions League, but because of his sale they don't make it, say, is it better to keep somebody like that in the building? And that's the thing that we need to start thinking about moving forward. Is it better for us to keep like Eagleman in the building now until the Champions League, until we're either in it or we're out it, like before we sell him? Because he could be the guy that makes the difference against a Panathinaikos, or if you're good enough to get by them, whoever you play in the next round, and then after that as well. And these are the tough decisions that clubs have got every single year. Yes, if a player has a buyout clause, that's totally different, because at that point you have no option but to sell them.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, yeah.
No, there isn't. And this is the thing now within football, there's more and more deals that have these buyout clauses. Basically, every single transfer now has a sell-on fee. So see when you think, oh, that's great, we're going to get like 15 million for Eagerman. Well, the reality is it's only a £13 million profit because we paid £2 million for him roughly. And say they've got a 20% sell-on fee, which is of the profit of the deal. So out of the £13 million profit, you're having to then pay them 2.6 million.
Mm-hmm.
So in reality, it turns into a £10 million deal. So is a £10 million profit on Eagerman really enough? And this is what the club have to look at and decide, because clearly there's always like mitigating factors in a lot of these. You know, does the player have a loyalty bonus that he needs to be paid?
Yeah, which can
because a lot of these contracts are based on loyalty bonuses now. So they're given, so if it's a 4-year deal and say their loyalty bonus is £500,000, it's 125 grand every year for the 4 years. So you've got all these additional things to come on it. Like there might be bonuses that need to be paid to the player. So in the end, for all the big figure looks great, in reality it starts to go dropping. And then there's a final figure, which might be, say, a £8.5 million profit in the books. But you know what I mean, though? So unless somebody's moving for a monumental amount of money, 35, 40 million pounds, which I don't know if that'll ever happen in Scottish football. I think that...
Well, it might in the future, but not right now.
Yeah, like it feels like there's a ceiling on transfers in Scottish football for clubs.
Yeah.
Like it does feel like that kind of 20 to 25 million is the ceiling for like the top transfers. And I think that isn't great in comparison to what it probably could or should be.
Can I just ask everybody who is watching, especially on the old YouTube, if you haven't already, could you please give the show a wee like? It really does help. The viewing figures over the last 2-3 days, in fact over the last kind of week and a half, have been nothing short of sensational. So thank you to everybody who has tuned in. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. YouTube are a bit of a nightmare, to be fair, with the notifications, but more often than not, you do get a notification that the show's on. So please do give the show a like, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Make sure you share it, of course, across all platforms. All links to all of our socials are in the description. And if you want to help the podcast out a little bit more and get some more content on top of what we already offer, then you can become a member. Links for which are in the description. Now, Wally, there was another link to the football club, one that I was expecting us to be linked with. It's no surprise to me we're being linked with them, and I don't think it'll end until either obviously signs for somebody else or possibly comes into Rangers. Bojan Majowski, is this a transfer that you could see happening for the football club?
Well, I think there's a far higher chance of it happening now than it was when he was at Aberdeen. I think that's a kind of fair assessment. Look, I always thought he was a good player. I think he would be a really good fit for us, in all honesty. Whether that deal happens or not, obviously we'll find out in due course. But I think if the deal's right and it's the right figures for Rangers and they're content to obviously pay that fee, then I think he would be a really good fit for us. He's somebody that's proven at this level. He did a really, really good job for Aberdeen. You would like to think that obviously we can create more chances than what Aberdeen did when he was there. So there's a better chance for him to score even more goals than what he did there. If you just look at the Dessers numbers, you would imagine that Majowski can at least, equal that, if not better. Is he a player
that Martin would look at, though? Is he a player that would suit a Martin system?
Yeah, I think he would. And I think, again, one of the big things this summer, and I think this was something that there's been a lot of kind of chats about, is that we really need to hit the ground running like this season. So the fact he's played in Scottish football, it's not like you're bringing somebody in that doesn't know the league. This guy has played in Scotland for a couple of years. He knows, the difficulties of playing at, all the grounds in Scotland, Tynecastle, Leicester Road, etc. It's not like that would surprise him. He's not coming into a different environment from what he's been in before. Yes, he's at Rangers instead of Aberdeen, but, you're back to Scotland. A lot of the things are the same, aren't they? I do think he would be a really, really nice signing for us, in all honesty. And I think he's definitely somebody that would certainly improve us. But that's only if we can obviously move another striker on, because I don't see us adding a fourth striker if we can't move on either Dessers or Eagerman or Danilo, because from that point of view, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it, if I'm totally honest?
No, well, again, Russell Martin's come out and said, no, the Dessers deal's, as far as I'm concerned, off. They haven't offered the money that we want. He'll be back in at training. So, I mean, as far as it looks right now, Wally, Dessers is going to be here next season.
Yeah, again, I don't have any issue with that. I mean, at the end of the day, until somebody hits our figure, then, sort of, why should we let somebody go? I mean, people are saying, but we need this, we need that. And I said, yeah, that's all fine to a point. But at the end of the day, there's no point in us selling Dessers for a knockdown fee. Then we need to then pay 4 or 5 million to bring somebody else in. You know what I mean? So, if we can get the 4 or 5 million for the big man, then at least that money can be utilised bringing in somebody who's going to be a guaranteed starter.
Yeah. And as Cammy's saying, Dessers can be our super sub. I think that actually suits him better than starting. I really do.
Yeah, look, I mean, let's be totally honest, right? See if we could move on one striker this summer, it would definitely be Danilo. And if the club could somehow get 3 or 4 million for Danilo, which to me still seems a long way off, but the club need to try and actually sell Danilo this summer, because I mean, even this coming season, I don't see Danilo playing a huge amount of football under Russell Martin in terms of this current system that we play. Because I think if he get man and Dessers are fit, then he's, a minimum third choice.
Well, here's a great point for your namesake. AAK just paid 2 million for Penrice. And people are saying we should sell Dessers for 3 million. Couldn't make it up. Top scorer in the SPL. A left back. Was Penrice Livingston or was Penrice Hearts?
He moved from Livingston to Hearts, yeah.
Right, well, we'll see there. I know he's full history. There we go. But a Hearts left back goes for 2 million, and we sell the top scorer in the league for 3 million. I know,
it's wild. I mean, again, that's why social media is absolutely mad. That we think we should flog our best, goal scorer of the last 2 years for 3 million quid. I mean, it's just ludicrous, isn't it? Yeah, I think Rangers should be looking at a bare minimum of £4 million for Dessers with add-ons. A bare minimum of 4 million plus add-ons. And obviously that money would then allow us to go into the transfer market and potentially bring in somebody else.
Yeah.
Who maybe would be the first choice striker for Russell Martin.
I think we have to go back to... Sorry, well, I was just going to say, I think we have to go back to the conversation, though, of fans' expectations. And when I say fans' expectations, I'm talking about me as well, because I've jumped the gun hundreds of times, right? But we mentioned that there's about 20 minutes ago, or whenever we were talking about it, Fabio Silva went to Wolves for between 30 and 40 million, whatever it was. Couldn't make it at Wolves. A £30 million player could not make it in Scotland, right? And we complain about Dessers being the top goal scorer in Scotland, but missing loads of chances, and he cost us 4 million.
I know. There's really no much to add to that. Do you know what I mean?
It's mental. It's mental.
See, look, the reality is, right? See, for football, people will always be judged on success. So see, when you're winning trophies, I genuinely think that people will always be deemed to be better players than what they are. Whereas, see, when you're not winning things, people will always say you're not good enough or you weren't that good. I mean, I still see a lot of people talk about players of bygone years, they were excellent players. In reality, there was a lot of players that played for Rangers under Walter Smith that were probably just decent players. But they played in a really, really good Rangers team who had 5 or 6 exceptional players. So those 5 or 6 exceptional players in the main got that team to success. And then
Kevin Nisbet played in the Champions League for Rangers. Kevin Nisbet, who was a decent player, good player, not fantastic, not a phenomenal player, Kevin Nisbet. But
you're talking Kenny Miller?
No, Nisbet. Remember he scored that weird goal against, who was it?
Oh, I big 7.5.
When he tried to cross it and it
Scott Nisbet?
Scott Nisbet, sorry, not Kevin. He plays for.
I'm wondering who you're talking about Kevin for.
Sorry, Scott Nisbet. Sorry, I've got Kevin Nisbet in the brain for some reason. Again, Wally, not a phenomenal player, Scott Nisbet. Good player, not phenomenal. Plays in the Champions League for Rangers and is looked back on fondly because of that goal.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's people will always look at the longevity of a player at a football club and get back to what he won. I mean, that's the reality of how football is at every level. And you look at the abuse that Harry Kane took for 10 years at Spurs because he never won anything. But I mean, Harry Kane was probably the best natural striker in Europe. in terms of scoring goals, and it's took him to get a move to Bayern Munich to win a league title. But like, did that mean that Harry Kane wasn't a very good player for his whole career because he only won one title? No, it doesn't. He's still a very, very good footballer. And this is where, like, people see things in the wrong way. Like, what Cyril Dessers has did in the last 2 years as a Rangers striker is what he was brought in to do, which was to score 25 goals a season. And that's basically what he's done. But because the team's not won a lot other than a League Cup, then that's deemed that he's not good enough. But the reality is, like, he has done his job, which was to score goals. Whereas our big issue has been that we've not had enough goals for midfield, we've not had enough goals for the wide players, and we've conceded far too many goals.
And
so he did his part of the job.
Set pieces as well.
Yeah. So there's always you've always got to look at the other side of it. But people just, I think, always pick up in the negativity and they just carry it through. I mean, see James Tavernier in a Walter Smith team, he would have been unbelievable. You imagine the amount of goals that Tavernier scored in that team, the amount of freedom that he would have got, playing with a Laudrup, playing with a Gascoigne. I mean, that would have been wild watching somebody like Tavernier back then playing in the Rangers team. And that's the thing, like, people just remember what happened during those years. And unfortunately for James Tavernier, he's been the captain of a Rangers team that, like, in the main during his term, hasn't been that successful. But it doesn't make him a bad player. In fact, he's probably been one of the better players that we've had in the last 10 years comfortably because of what he brings to the team. But people will always fall on the negative side because, well, they're not happy with his defensive work, well, they're not happy about the amount of titles that's not been won, etc. And that's how people will judge them. And that's their opinion. They're allowed to have that. But I do think it's wild that you would judge a player on, like, what he's won in his career. Because if that's the case, there's a lot of top players who have played for good teams who haven't won a lot.
Yeah.
So they're no bad footballers.
In the circumstances of Rangers, though, I understand it because we're expected, all right, a lot's changed since 2012, but we're expected to win things. We're expected to win leagues. We're expected to win cups, etc., etc. So I completely understand it from that point of view, by supporters like myself who are shouting at Cherny after his first Old Firm, just go back to Wolfsburg, you're no use to us, and then ends up our best player in that season. I get the, I completely understand the overreactions, Willie, because
again, that's people who like.
No matter.
But again, this is people that like have opinions on people after one or two games on. You can't have an opinion after.
Yeah, but no matter what way you want to discuss it, the fact of the matter is that over the last 14, 15 years, Rangers as a football club, all right, we won coming back through the leagues, but is what it is. Rangers haven't been a successful football team.
No.
So the players, regardless of who they are going to get it because we haven't been successful. Whether they've been given the right tools to work with, whether they've been given the right coaches, whether they've been given the right training, whether they made enough special coffee, whatever it is, we haven't been successful. So the players are going to get it.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, like, that is the brutal side of football. Like, I mean, that's how. I look at the bigger picture. I've always done that as a football fan. I know a lot of people don't see it like that, but I always have. I've always looked at, like, sort of how good the individual was, how good the team was, how successful the team was. People view these things in a lot of different ways. And I'll always view things differently when it comes to, like, academy players breaking into the first team. Maybe because I see how difficult it is to make those steps into the first team. Whereas because other people don't, straight away the judgment is, well, they're not good enough or they've never been good enough. Because some people will never change their opinion on Cyril Dessers. Cyril Dessers could go out this season under Russell Martin, score 30 goals and we won a league title, right? But some people will still come back and say, well, you know what, Dessers is still shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because some people just have an opinion and that's it. Like, they're so focused on having that opinion that they won't change. And that's how football, isn't it?
It's not just football. It's life in general. We're all like that, I suppose.
See, but I'm quite open. I mean, I'm quite an open person. So, I mean, if somebody could be an idiot one day to me, but in general, they're decent people, so I don't judge them just on that one day. Like, I judge them over a longer.
I judged you the moment I met you.
I know, but you know that I'm a nice guy, though. That's the thing.
Well, sometimes. Just want to put this to you as well. And yes, I know we're 49 minutes in. But Vic X is X. Vix. That confused Willie, as you could see.
I was just trying to read what it said because I'm doing this on my phone, so everything's like a lot smaller.
Seemingly, preliminarily, I can't say that word. Can you say it for me, Wally? Preliminarily.
Yeah, so basically talks with Vardy. That's basically what the guy said.
Well, it's a woman. Vix is a woman.
I can't even see that picture. I mean, that's how small it is on my phone.
But again, is Vardy somebody whether it's doable or not, whether he's willing to drop down, a significant amount of his wage, right? Is that a deal that we should be looking at, Jamie Vardy?
Look, there's no doubt that in his heyday, he was an unbelievable footballer. This is a guy that came from non-league, I think it was, to Fleetwood, wasn't it? Then Fleetwood to Leicester City, won a Premier League title, got his England caps. That is the stuff that dreams are made of, what sort of Vardy's done in his career, in all honesty. Would he be a good fit for this Rangers team? I'm not too sure, if I'm totally honest. And I think it does partly come down to the age he's at now. Like, is he somebody that could play every 3 or 4 days for Rangers? Or would we mainly try and utilise him in Scottish football? And then we would maybe have another striker that plays the European games. I don't know. But I don't know if a guy at his age could play. I mean, what's a successful season for Rangers? 55, 60 games? Is a guy at that age going to be able to play 50 plus games a season? I'm not so sure. But then again, that's where we need to utilise the squad. But if Kevin Felwell and Dan Purdy and also Russell Martin feel that he would be a good fit for us, then that's their choice. Whether it would work or not, I guess only time will tell. But you can say that about any signing that's come into Rangers in the last 10 years, because every signing is a gamble. Like, regardless of how good they've been somewhere else, until they sort of pull on that Rangers jersey, and they have to do it when it's required in some people's eyes, that's where the judgment will always come, isn't it?
It is. And there's people saying, no Vardy. Vardy can jog on, can't justify Vardy's wages.
Yeah, of course.
Just domestic or just Europe, and that is the big point, I suppose, in it. Although he is a supremely what's the word I'm looking for? Experience, that's what I'm looking for. Premier League player, scored a hell of a lot of goals, didn't come into football until he was a little bit older, and I don't know how much that actually makes a difference to people. So how when people say, well, he didn't start playing, look, Ian Wright, he didn't start playing until he was in his early 20s. Yeah, but when you're 35, you're still 35. So I don't know how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah, it's probably just the toll on the body, isn't it, in terms of the level you've been playing at, like the longevity factor. It's interesting. I mean, I don't doubt for a minute we will bring in a striker this summer, but I think it'll only happen if we can move one of them out. Mm-hmm. Because the reality is, to add another striker without, sort of repeat myself, to add another striker means we've got 4 strikers at the football club. And to me, that's way too many for a team that in the main is going to play with a one-man strike force. Mm-hmm. So you've got to consider these things. It's a bit like, there's even in the last a month or so, we've added Cameron, Asgard and Rothwell to that midfield. Now, we've already got Dowell, Raskin, Diamande, Rice, and you could even add sort of Barami in there. Yeah, so it's like you're talking about 8, 9, 10 guys potentially. So this is why we need to get guys going that way. We need to get guys out the door so that we can then look at the squad and say, right, this is what we need, because the squad's at the moment is only getting bigger and the wage bill is only getting bigger. Whereas we want to try and sort of clear some of these guys out the door. But obviously, under the new ownership and under the new people, they're going to want fees. Even if Dowell goes out the door, see if Rangers can even get 500 grand or 800 grand or £1 million for Dowell, whatever it is they might end up getting, whatever. As long as they're getting some money back into the club and they're clearing the wages, that money can be put to better use.
Yeah.
And I think this is the big issue that the club have got. It's probably trying to get fees for some of these guys. It's not going to be easy. I think with Dowell and Davies, it's maybe slightly easier because they did well at Birmingham last year in League One. So there probably is clubs in the English Championship that will take them. Well, they'll pay us a fee as well. That might be the issue. And this is where you start to go, well, there's another £3 million Davies walking out the door for free, but we've cleared 25 grand a week after the wage bill. So you've got to weigh it up, don't you? You need to weigh up both sides of it. Is it better to clear the wages, or do you keep them about the building because somebody's not willing to pay a fee for them? So, I'm just going to be alone next 6-8 weeks.
As Teresa said there, it's all right saying get rid of the deadwood. Who's going to take them off our hands? Like you look at it, Willie, genuinely, right? And I know we've discussed this 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
But who's taking a Matondo, right? For example, is there going to be a club out there who's going to take him for a fee that the board are going to be happy with? Because you're saying, look, if we want to get rid of Dowell, then they're going to want X amount of money. Are the board going to want too much for what somebody's willing to pay for the likes of Matondo, for Dowell, for Davies? The old board worked magic to get Scott Wright out the door.
If you look at it, this is like a kind of rough estimate for us. We obviously don't know what the players are earning. But if you say that Davies is on 25, if you say that Matondo's on 25, they might be on more, they might be on less, but there's 50 grand. If you say that Dowell's on 15, there's 65 grand. That's £3 million a year in wages. So Rangers have to look at it for 2 points, right? Is it better to clear the wages of those three guys? Because I think they're all out of contract at the end of the season anyway. Is it better to clear the £3 million in wages, which clears the wage bill? Or, how do you put it? Do you try and squeeze even a small fee out of a club? See, at the end of the day, somebody like Ben Davies is worth something, but I think it's unlikely we're going to get our money back for Ben Davies, which was around about the £3.5 million. The fact Dowell came as a bosman, that's different. But we also paid a fee for Matondo, so we're probably about between £5 and £6 million in fees for Matondo and Davies, plus the £3+ million in this year's wages.
Well, let me ask you then, right? Because it's just come into my head. Look, new owners, loads of money, blah, blah, blah. We all know that, right? Now, you've just mentioned there the likes of Dowell, Matondo are in the last year of their contract, right? I know these are businessmen, right, who have been very successful throughout their life. But could they possibly look at the 4 or 5 players who aren't going to get much game time? Because no doubt Russell Martin and Purdy and Thelwell have had these conversations with Kavanagh and Marath and stuff. I think the board for this one season would be willing to look at it and go, right, we've got 100 grand a month, or 100 grand a week, sorry, right, sitting there. It's not going to get used. That's X amount of million over a season. Can we take the hit on these players for this? Because our contracts are about to run out. Can we just take the few million quid hit? And then from the following season, everything will be running smoothly. Do you think the board would do that and yet still spend X amount of million on players?
It would be a big financial hit. A big financial hit. And at the end of the day, we sort of need to find ways to get fees for these guys, because then it helps us moving forward with the FFP as well. Because you sort of want to get money back on most of these guys, if possible. We haven't even touched on guys like Ridvan, like Jose. We paid a fee for Jose from America. I think we paid around about £1 million, £1.5 million. It's rumoured we paid between £3 and £4 million for Ridvan. If you're looking at the £4 million for Dessers, the £4 million for Barami, at some point, you've got to start bringing that money back in, because if not, all you've ever done is just pay. And you've got wages on top of that, agents' fees, bonus fees, all these other things. And none of that's coming back into the building. But you know what I mean? No, that's the actual galling part of the whole thing. And as a football club, that needs to change. So I would say, with the players that are out of contract in a year's time, do we just have to accept, as you said there, that maybe we just let them all walk away as free agents right now and we just clear them off the wage bill? Or do we actually try and fight our corner and say, well, no, see, if you want Ben Davies, it's £2 million. If you want Kieran Dowell, it's £500,000. If you're going to take Rabbi Matondo, we want £1 million. But you've got to then find somebody to pay the $1 million plus take his wages. And this, I think, is our difficulty this summer.
As Kevin's saying there, we received 0 on transfers. Well, it's not quite 0, but it's effectively 0. And Celtic have received well over 20 million. We need to start selling. So that's the opposite argument to what I've just made. It's at what point do we start receiving money if we just keep allowing players' contracts to run out?
100%, mate. And this is why it's an endless debate. And I'm sure people in the comments are probably kind of to and fro on it. I mean, look, the reality is we can't afford to keep signing players for that kind of money and then basically just letting them walk away for free. That's something that needs to stop right now. But the problem we have is we've got about 8 or 9 guys, I think, that are out of contract at the end of this year. So the players are actually in control now. So, like for somebody like Ben Davies, right? Ben Davies could just sit and say, well, you know what, screw you, I'm just going to sit for the next 6 months at Rangers, and then I'll sign for somebody in a Bosman in January. Because he's likely going to maybe get another punt in his wages. He'll likely get a decent signing on fee somewhere. So Rangers actually, in a lot of ways, are in a really difficult position. That's why, in the main, you don't want players to drop below 2 years on their contract. Because at that point, the player starts to take like some degree of control. Because like at that point, Rangers can't do anything about it. If the player keeps turning down contract offers, there's absolutely nothing you can do. That's why this summer there's some big decisions to be made. Because Ridvan's in his last 2 years, Raskan's in his last 2 years, I think Butland's in his last 2 years. So you need to start thinking ahead. It's not just about now, it's about what will happen in 12 months' time. And then in 12 months' time, if we can't sell these guys, they're probably just going to sit tight because, you know, so why would they walk away?
Mm-hmm.
Because they can sit another 6 months and then sign a pre-contract and maybe get another punt on their wages.
That's where you're
so
looking
the
at
longer
the
that you let
mentality
it
of
go,
the
the worse
players.
it gets.
That's where you're looking at the mentality of the players. What do they want? Are they happy to sit about for a year and wait? Like Sir Raskin, for example, he wants to play at the top level. He's broke into the Belgium team. He's not going to be wanting to be to and fro on his career moving forward. He's going to want everything set.
Yeah.
Or does he have that mentality of, well, if I leave in a couple of years, then I'm going to move to not a bigger club, but a richer club who can pay me more wages. So it's an absolute. Football's a difficult game outside of being on the pitch, to be honest with you.
See, but the reality is, like, we've been run poorly as a business for too long, and we've allowed too many players to walk away without getting fees. So, like, this board have walked in yet again, and they can see what has basically been a shit show of guys that have been allowed to let their contracts dwindle down to a point. I mean, like, see, a lot of people laugh and joke about it, right? We could have and should have had at least 10 million for Ryan Kent. Like, we should have took the money and we should have spent that money to, like, sort of recruit again. The money we got offer for Morelos at the time, we should have took it. And obviously the offers that came in for Barisic, which I don't think were huge offers, but I think they were in the region of like 45 million. If we took that money for, say, Kent, Morelos and Barisic, there's £30 million in sales that should have happened. Instead, like, those 3 guys walked away for free.
Mm-hmm.
And that money then had to be spent again on other players who then came in and probably weren't any better than the guys that we had there before.
Even allowing the likes of Goldson to leave for effectively free. You know?
One of the best players we had at the club. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And this is the problem. The club have to now get a structure in place where if a player signs a 4-year deal, the cut-off point for that player is 2 years. So that player has got 2 years to be a top player, and after those 2 years, he's sold or he signs a new extension to his contract. So I think it's beyond clear now that Ridvan is deemed he's not going to be a starter, because the fact they gave Max Aarons his number 3 jersey and he's not even a left back, like, to me that's a get that up your Ridvan, you're no wanted, basically.
Does that tell you, by the way, that he might be looking to play Max Aarons at left back and Tav at right back?
Don't think so. No, I don't think so. No, I think that is almost a telltale sign to Ridvan that he's been told that he can go. He's got 2 years left of his contract. He spent the majority of his time at Rangers injured. Rangers are probably looking to cash in on him this summer. And possibly, as you've seen at any other football clubs, clubs will do certain things that might sicken a player. And the fact that he's been given the number 3 jersey ahead of Ridvan, to me, is a bit of a telltale sign. Yeah, of course, mate. And look, let's be honest about it. We know what happens. We've seen it before. Maybe you don't always see all the things that happen. But I don't doubt for a minute that, you know, the players that have been told they're free to go might not be happy about it, some of them. But like, the reality is, I'm sure things are happening behind the scenes. But it's okay accepting a bid for somebody. But if they don't want to move, then the club are then stuck with a player for the next 2 years on a good wage. And he's probably going to walk away for free. That's why it's imperative that you get deals done for these guys and that you bring money back into the football club. Because if not, you're just continually going through this cycle of paying 3, 4, 5, 6 million pounds for guys, and then 3, 4 years down the line they're walking out the door for free, which really isn't a good business in anybody's books.
No, and I don't like the right back. I'm the same as Timothy in the comments. I don't like the right back having the number 3 jersey, but that's just an old school thing in me. Can I just say, by the way, Singing the Blues, I seen your comment for earlier, and I didn't bring it up because it was absolutely disgusting. So there's no way I was bringing that up. Have a word with yourself. That's a shocking comment. Absolutely terrible. Nobody has touched this mic apart from me. Right, that's all I'm going to say on it. Wally, we'll leave it there, buddy. That's an hour and 5 minutes of a half an hour show. I'd imagine your
that's
phone's
your fault. My
battery's
washing machine's bloody finished off an hour ago. I was supposed to have that washing hung out, you know.
It's not my fault, it's your fault. But listen, folks, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please give us a like on either YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, wherever you're watching. Please do like the show. It really, really does help. Don't expect this every day, just a wee extended show because it was my good friend Wally that was on. So don't expect this every day. And if you want to help the podcast grow and move into some press side of things, is all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say out loud what that is. Then join as a member now and get access to loads of extra content and all the new stuff that is coming your way this season. So, Wally, mate, thank you very much.
A pleasure.
And now I've got to go and explain to the missus because I have to go and do a run to the dump. And she says, "What time do you finish?" And I went, about 1:05. Now I've got to go and explain why it's now nearly 20 to.
Well, you can just blame me for it. It's all right.
Oh, I will. She knows where you live, so it's all good.
I know.
It's all good. Right, folks, take it easy. Join us tonight at 7 p.m. if you are a member for your midweek members show. I'm not telling you who's hosting. You'll need to wait and find out. So until then, folks, have a good day, and we shall speak very, very soon.